Picture an empire that rose from the swamps of a vast lake, building towering temples under the watchful eyes of blood-red sunsets. An empire so powerful, it dominated ancient Mexico, yet vanished almost overnight under the weight of prophecy and conquest. This is the world of the Aztecs, a civilization wrapped in mysteries as thick as the jungle vines that now reclaim their ruins. What if I told you everything you think you know about them is only half the story? Beneath the surface lies a treasure trove of secrets, astonishing discoveries that rewrite history, challenge our assumptions, and reveal a people far more complex than the legends suggest. From their eerie predictions of doom to the chilling rituals performed atop pyramids shimmering with sacrificial blades, the Aztecs crafted a world where myth and reality blurred. They transformed a mosquito-infested island into a glittering capital, Tenochtitlan, a city so grand it left Spanish invaders breathless with disbelief. But here's the twist: their true legacy isn't just about war or gold. It's about engineering marvels that defied their time, medical knowledge that still stuns modern scientists, and a cosmic vision so precise it rivals our own calendars. How did a civilization with no wheels or draft animals achieve such brilliance? And why did their own prophecies seem to seal their fate? That's where this journey begins. Over the next 25 revelations, we'll peel back layers of time to uncover the Aztecs as you've never seen them. You'll witness their ingenuity in ways that defy stereotypes, like their secret farming techniques that fed millions or their surprising love for poetry and art. You'll confront the haunting question: were they truly the ruthless warriors history painted, or victims of a narrative twisted by conquerors? Every discovery here will challenge you to rethink what's possible for an ancient people. So lean in close. The Aztecs left clues buried in ruins, hidden in codices, even whispered in the winds over their lost capital. And together, we're about to bring those whispers roaring back to life. Imagine a city rising from the water itself, not on solid ground, but on a maze of artificial islands woven together by canals so perfectly aligned they looked like liquid streets. This was Tenochtitlan, the Aztec capital, a place so advanced it made Spanish conquistador Hernán Cortés doubt his own eyes when he first saw it in 1519. He wrote to the King of Spain, calling it the most beautiful thing in the world, comparing its grandeur to Venice, yet admitting it surpassed even European capitals in order and sophistication. But how did the Aztecs achieve this architectural miracle in the middle of a lake? The answer lies in their mastery of chinampas, floating gardens crafted from layers of mud, reeds, and willow roots anchored to the lake bed. These weren't just patches of soil, they were feats of bioengineering, producing harvests so abundant they fed a population of over 200,000. The Aztecs didn't just adapt to their watery world, they reshaped it, turning a seemingly uninhabitable swamp into a grid of productivity. Their canals weren't just for transportation, they were a cooling system, a defense network, and even a way to recycle nutrients back into the gardens. But the genius didn't stop there. Tenochtitlan's urban planners designed the city with mathematical precision, aligning major temples and plazas to mirror the movements of the sun and stars. The main causeways acted like celestial arrows, pointing to sacred mountains on the horizon. Even their sewage system put many medieval European cities to shame, with public latrines and waste collection that kept the water cleaner than the Thames or Seine at the time. Today, modern Mexico City sits atop these ruins, but echoes of the Aztecs' brilliance still surface literally. During construction projects, workers often uncover stone foundations, carved sculptures, or even remnants of those very chinampas, preserved like time capsules under layers of concrete. It's a haunting reminder that beneath our feet lies a lost world of innovation, one that challenges the stereotype of the Aztecs as mere warriors. They were engineers, ecologists, and city builders whose vision still humbles us centuries later. Buried beneath Mexico City's bustling streets for centuries, the Aztec Sun Stone was unearthed in 1790, a 12-foot wide slab of volcanic rock so intricate it silenced the workers who found it. Today, it's often called the Aztec Doomsday Calendar, thanks to modern myths twisting its purpose into something ominous. But the truth, this stone was never a prophecy of apocalypse. It was a cosmic library, a masterpiece of science and spirituality that mapped the Aztecs' universe down to the minute. At first glance, the Sun Stone's concentric circles seem overwhelming, a whirl of serpents' claws and glyphs swirling around a central deity. But each layer was meticulously calculated. The outermost ring holds 20 symbols not for doom, but for the days in the Aztec month. The next layer tracks the 52-year cycle when their solar and ritual calendars aligned, a moment so sacred entire cities would extinguish fires and rekindle them with ceremonial drills symbolizing renewal. Even the so-called apocalypse date just the end of one cycle and the start of another, like our December 31st midnight countdown. What's truly staggering are the hidden mathematical codes modern researchers have decoded. The stone's dimensions align with movements of Venus, a planet the Aztecs associated with war and rebirth. Its carvings mark solar eclipses, and some scholars argue the entire design is a geometric equation predicting celestial events centuries ahead. Their precision rivals modern astronomy, all without telescopes or written numbers, using only observation and oral tradition passed down through generations. But here's the twist: the Sun Stone wasn't just a scientific tool. It was a spiritual compass, the face at its center. That's Tenochtitlan, the sun god, demanding sacrificial nourishment to keep the cosmos in motion. To the Aztecs, time wasn't linear. It was a fragile balance requiring human participation. A single misaligned ceremony could trigger cosmic chaos. This duality, math and myth intertwined, reveals a civilization far more nuanced than history books suggest. Recent laser scans even suggest the stone might have been painted in vivid blues and reds, turning it into a dazzling, dynamic teaching tool for priests and students. Imagine standing in Tenochtitlan's main plaza, watching sunlight hit the carvings at solstice, casting shadows that lined up like celestial clock hands. This wasn't a doomsday device. It was a testament to the Aztecs' genius, a civilization that read the stars like a roadmap and carved their understanding in stone for eternity. The Aztecs didn't fear death. They saw it as sacred currency, a necessary exchange to keep the universe alive. Beneath their towering temples, archaeologists have uncovered gruesome proof. Thousands of skulls stacked in neat rows, their hollow eyes staring blankly from ancient racks called tzompantli. These weren't trophies of war, but offerings to the gods, part of a spiritual economy where human life fueled the sun's rise each dawn. But how much of what we know about these rituals is truth, and how much is myth spun by conquistadors hungry to justify their own violence? Recent excavations at the Templo Mayor in Mexico City reveal a staggering find: a skull rack stretching nearly 100 feet long, holding the remains of men, women, and even children. Forensic studies show many were captives from distant battles, their teeth filed into sharp points or adorned with jade, a sign they'd been treated as honored guests before sacrifice. Others bore evidence of healing injuries, suggesting they lived for years as ritual participants, not just victims. The Spanish claimed tens of thousands died yearly, but modern archaeology tells a different story. Chemical analysis of soil around altars suggests far fewer sacrifices occurred, with bones often reused in multiple ceremonies. To the Aztecs, this wasn't brutality, it was a sacred contract. Their creation myths told of gods who'd sacrificed themselves to create the sun, and humanity owed a debt. Without blood, the world would plunge into eternal night. Priests performed rituals with surgical precision, using obsidian blades sharper than modern steel, aiming to release the tonal life force trapped in the heart. Victims weren't mourned, they were celebrated as messengers to the divine. some even volunteered, believing death in service to the gods guaranteed paradise. The Spanish, however, had every reason to exaggerate. Cortés's letters described rivers of blood, but his accounts were propaganda designed to paint the Aztecs as monsters deserving conquest. Modern scans of skull racks show careful arrangement, not careless dumping, with many skulls drilled to be displayed on poles, a practice meant to honor the dead, not desecrate them. Even the famed flower wars were less about carnage and more about controlled combat to secure ritual captives, a system not so different from Europe's jousting tournaments. Perhaps the most haunting revelation comes from a 2016 discovery, a skull rack adorned with mortar and seashells, suggesting some remains were displayed for decades, maybe even generations. These weren't just offerings, they were memorials, a way to keep the sacred present in everyday life. The Aztecs lived with death not as a shadow but as a companion, a reminder that every heartbeat was part of a cosmic balance far older than empires. When the Spanish stormed Tenochtitlan in 1521, they weren't just conquering a city, they were looting a kingdom's worth of gold, jewels, and sacred artifacts. Emperor Montezuma's treasure was legendary: solid gold discs as wide as wagon wheels, jade masks with eyes of obsidian, feather headdresses shimmering with turquoise. But here's where the mystery deepens. While the conquistadors hauled away chests of plunder, whispers persisted that the bulk of the treasure vanished before they could lay hands on it. Some say Montezuma's priests hid it in secret tunnels beneath the city. Others claim it was smuggled north and buried in a cave or sunk to the bottom of Lake Texcoco under cover of night. For centuries, treasure hunters have chased these rumors, armed with crumbling maps and cryptic Aztec codices. In the 1930s, a Mexican archaeologist claimed to find a golden bar in a Mexico City sewer. Chemical analysis matched it to Aztec metallurgy, sparking a frenzy of speculation. More recently, ground-penetrating radar detected strange voids beneath the ancient city's ruins, but excavation is nearly impossible with modern buildings layered above. The most tantalizing clue comes from a Spanish soldier's diary, describing a frantic nighttime convoy leaving Tenochtitlan weeks before the fall, laden with heavy chests that clanked like bells. Some historians believe this was Montezuma's last-ditch effort to protect his empire's wealth, possibly stashing it near the sacred city of Colula. Local legends there speak of a sealed cavern guarded by spirits where gold gleams like a second sun. Yet the truth may be far simpler and darker. Recent studies of Spanish shipwrecks in the Gulf of Mexico reveal that much of the looted gold was actually melted down into ingots during transport, erasing priceless artworks forever. As for the rest, every few years, a farmer plowing a field or a diver probing a lake bed finds a golden figurine worn smooth by time. These fragments hint at a treasure scattered, not hidden a king's ransom lost to war, greed, and the relentless passage of centuries. The Spanish invaders mocked the Aztecs as superstitious savages, but their own doctors would later steal pages from Aztec medical texts because this civilization had mastered healing techniques Europe wouldn't discover for centuries. Inside the Florentine Codex, a 16-volume encyclopedia compiled by Spanish friars with Aztec scribes, lies evidence of a medical system so advanced it included anesthesia, sterile surgical tools, and antibiotics extracted from mold long before penicillin. Take their use of obsidian. While European surgeons hacked through limbs with rusty saws, Aztec healers wielded razor-sharp volcanic glass scalpels so precise they could remove cataracts from eyeballs or suture wounds with human hair. Archaeologists have unearthed these blades in burial sites, still stained with a resinous antiseptic derived from pine sap, a natural germ killer modern science confirms has antibacterial properties. The Codex even details painless surgeries where patients chewed datura flowers, a potent anesthetic that numbed the body before procedures, but their real genius lay in pharmacopoeia. The Aztecs cataloged over 3,000 medicinal plants, from ground maguey sap for infected wounds to psilocybin mushrooms for spiritual healing. One treatment, a paste made from crushed cochineal insects, contained carminic acid, now known to fight staphylococcus infections. Another, the bark of the cuochallalate tree, held compounds later isolated as the basis for tamoxifen, a modern breast cancer drug. Even their primitive sweat baths or temazcals were sophisticated detox chambers where steam infused with medicinal herbs treated everything from arthritis to childbirth recovery. What shocked Spanish chroniclers most was the Aztec emphasis on specialization. Their tizitl or physicians weren't generalists. Some focused solely on broken bones, others on digestive ailments or eye diseases. Midwives used obsidian tools to perform cesareans, with codex illustrations showing postpartum mothers wrapped in heated cloths to prevent infection. There were even veterinary doctors who treated the empire's prized turkeys and dogs. Modern labs are now confirming what conquistadors dismissed as witchcraft. In 2018, researchers tested an ancient Aztec wound salve made from silver and copper compounds, and found it killed antibiotic-resistant MRSA bacteria. Another study revealed their practice of drinking chocolatl, a bitter cocoa mix, wasn't just ceremonial. Theobromine in cacao acted as a vasodilator, reducing heart disease risk. The irony, while Europe burned witches for using herbal remedies, Aztec medicine was arguably the most sophisticated in the world. A system where science and spirit intertwined to heal not just bodies but entire communities. Among the most enigmatic figures in the Aztec Empire were the Pochteca merchants who moved silently between cities, their packs laden with exotic goods, their ears tuned to whispers of rebellion. These weren't just traders, they were the empire's eyes and ears, a clandestine network of spies disguised as humble peddlers. Their disappearance after the Spanish conquest remains one of history's great vanishing acts, leaving behind only cryptic clues and unanswered questions. Operating in guilds so secretive they rivaled modern intelligence agencies, the Pochteca traveled routes stretching from the jungles of Maya lands to the deserts of the north. They traded in everything from jaguar pelts to cocoa beans, but their true value lay in information. A Spanish chronicler noted how they'd count the steps of a marketplace to estimate enemy troop numbers or gift feathered cloaks to chieftains to test their loyalty. When war loomed, their reports could trigger invasions or prevent them. Yet after 1521, the Pochteca vanished from records like smoke. Some scholars believe they melted into surviving indigenous communities, using their linguistic skills and trade networks to survive under Spanish rule. Fragments of their legacy appear in colonial documents, a merchant in Oaxaca court teaching Nahuatl to rebels, or a smuggler's ledger listing obsidian blades alongside Spanish armor. Others theorize the Pochteca were systematically hunted down, their knowledge of Aztec supply routes making them threats to the new colonial economy. The most tantalizing theory comes from a hidden chamber discovered beneath a Mexico City convent in 1984. Among faded murals of merchants carrying bundles, archaeologists found a single Pochteca staff, a wooden cane tipped with copper wrapped in a glyph-covered cloth. Carbon dating placed it in the mid-1600s, decades after the empire's fall. Was this proof they'd survived in secret, preserving their traditions in shadows? Or merely a relic hidden by someone who remembered their power? Today, descendants in rural Mexico still speak of ghost traders who appear at crossroads, offering rare goods before fading into the night. Whether myth or memory, these stories hint at a truth. The Pochteca didn't just disappear, they adapted, becoming as elusive in history as they once were in life. Beneath the ruins of the Templo Mayor, Mexico City's subway construction crews stumbled upon a find that stopped archaeologists mid-sentence. A buried cache so rich it rewrote our understanding of Aztec devotion. In 2014, under layers of volcanic rock and centuries of urban debris, researchers uncovered a 6-foot-wide stone box sealed with oyster shells. Inside lay a trove of jade beads, coral from the Caribbean, and the skeletons of a golden eagle, a jaguar, and an infant, each arranged with meticulous care. These weren't random offerings, they were cosmic blueprints, physical prayers to the gods that revealed a spiritual world far more nuanced than simple, bloodthirsty idolatry. The infant's bones, tested against modern DNA databases, showed ancestry from distant coastal tribes, proof the Aztecs sourced sacrificial participants from across their empire, possibly chosen for purity or symbolic ties to water deities. The jaguar, its claws still sheathed in copper bells, wore a carved wooden helmet depicting Tlaloc, the rain god, suggesting these animals were seen as divine avatars, not just victims. But the real shock came from the jade. Spectroscopic analysis traced its origin to Guatemalan mines 700 miles away. This single box confirmed the Aztecs' trade networks stretched farther than historians ever imagined, with materials moving along routes guarded by the Pochteca's secret merchant spies. What's even more revealing is how these offerings aligned with celestial events. The box was buried at the temple's exact northeast corner, a spot that, when mapped against the night sky in 1500, would have pointed directly to the Pleiades star cluster during its zenith. To the Aztecs, this constellation marked the beginning of the rainy season, making the offering a plea for agricultural abundance. The oyster shells weren't just sealants, their spiral shapes mirrored the Milky Way's curve, turning the entire cache into a miniature model of the cosmos. Later digs uncovered even stranger deposits, a pile of starfish and sea urchins arranged in geometric patterns, their spines still flecked with gold paint, and a ceramic jar filled with mercury, a liquid metal so rare the Aztecs believed it was the sweat of the sun god. These finds forced scholars to reconsider Aztec worship as a complex dialogue between earth and sky, where even the humblest materials held celestial significance. Modern reconstructions show how these offerings followed a precise ritual choreography. Priests would descend the pyramid steps at dawn, chanting as they placed each item according to sacred calendars. The jaguar, representing the earthly realm, faced west toward the setting sun, while the eagle, symbolizing the heavens, pointed east to the rising moon. The infant's placement at the center suggests a belief in cyclical rebirth, an idea echoed in contemporary oral histories from indigenous communities, who still describe these rituals as feeding the world's balance. Perhaps the most poignant discovery was a single turquoise mosaic mask, smaller than a child's palm, hidden beneath the jaguar's paw. Unlike the grandiose artworks displayed in museums, this mask was crudely made, its glue still bearing a fingerprint. Isotope testing revealed the turquoise came from Nevada, meaning this tiny object traveled over 1,500 miles before becoming someone's final offering. That fingerprint, preserved for half a millennium, whispers a truth often lost in history's grand narratives. Behind every ritual, every artifact, there was a person, a priest, a craftsman, a mourner, who pressed their hands into the clay of belief, leaving behind not just objects but echoes of their humanity. Long before chocolate bars lined supermarket shelves, the Aztecs revered cacao as nothing less than divine, a substance so precious it was used as money, medicine, and a direct line to the gods. Imagine a world where a handful of cacao beans could buy you a turkey, a canoe, or even a night with a courtesan, where counterfeiters stuffed avocado pits into bean husks to mimic their weight. This was the economy of flavor that fueled an empire, and at its center stood Montezuma, the ruler who reportedly drank 50 golden cups of chocolate daily from a goblet no commoner could touch. The sacred drink, called xocolatl, bore little resemblance to today's sweet confections. Mixed with chili peppers, vanilla, and maize, it was a frothy, bitter elixir whipped to a foam by pouring it between vessels at great heights, a technique so ceremonial it was depicted in codices alongside gods. Only nobles, warriors, and priests were permitted to taste it in its pure form, and the preparation process was shrouded in secrecy. Spanish friars later documented how Aztec brewers added ingredients like magnolia flowers or fermented sap to alter its effects, creating early versions of energy drinks or even aphrodisiacs. But cacao's true power lay in its spiritual role. Every stage of its journey, from the steamy rainforests where it grew to the polished stone grinders that crushed it, was steeped in ritual. Cacao trees were considered gifts from Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent god who, according to myth, stole the seeds from paradise. During festivals, priests dyed cacao pods with sacrificial blood before offering them to statues of deities. Even the act of drinking it was a form of communion, with the foam symbolizing the froth of creation itself. Modern science now confirms what the Aztecs intuited. Cacao contains theobromine, a stimulant that enhances focus, and anandamide, a compound that mimics the euphoria of runner's high. Archaeologists working in Oaxaca recently uncovered ceramic spouted vessels from the 1400s, their residues testing positive for traces of both cacao and hallucinogenic mushrooms, proof that the Aztecs may have crafted proto-psychedelic brews for visionary rituals. Yet for all its sacredness, chocolate also played a part in the empire's downfall. When Spanish conquistadors first encountered Moctezuma's storied stash, they scorned the bitter drink until indigenous women showed them how to sweeten it with honey and cane sugar, unwittingly creating the prototype for European hot chocolate. Within decades, cacao beans became a colonial commodity, stripped of their spiritual significance. But if you visit Mexican markets today, you'll still find vendors selling xocolotl the old way, spicy, earthy, and whisked by hand, a fleeting taste of the reverence this humble bean once commanded. In the quiet of a museum storage room in 1999, an archaeologist brushed dirt from a small, skull-shaped object, assuming it was just another child's toy from the Aztec era. But when researchers later reconstructed it and blew into it, the sound that erupted wasn't playful. It was the scream of a dying man, a pitch so harrowing it sent chills down the spines of everyone who heard it. This was the Aztec Death Whistle, a weapon of sound designed to paralyze with fear. Modern acoustical analysis reveals the whistle's genius. Unlike ordinary whistles, its internal chambers are carved to distort airflow, creating a frequency that mimics human anguish somewhere between a shriek and a howling wind. When played in unison by hundreds of warriors during battle or atop sacrificial pyramids, the effect would have been deafening. Spanish accounts describe hellish noises during sieges, with soldiers clutching their ears in terror, convinced demons were upon them. But this wasn't supernatural, it was neuroscience. Studies show the whistle's frequency triggers the amygdala, the brain's fear center, inducing primal panic even in modern listeners. The Aztecs understood something science now confirms: sound can be as lethal as steel. Warriors used these whistles in coordinated bursts, synchronized with drum beats to create dissonance that disoriented enemies. During sacrifices, priests may have blown them to mimic the cries of sacrificial victims, amplifying the ritual's psychological impact. Recent excavations near the Templo Mayor uncovered a cache of 20 such whistles arranged in a circle, suggesting they were played in chorus, a sonic assault weapon cloaked in sacred ceremony. What's most unsettling is how these artifacts defy categorization. Some feature intricate carvings of gods, blurring the line between tool and talisman. Others contain tiny pellets that rattle like bones when shaken, layering sound upon sound. Ethnomusicologists note that the Aztecs' entire cosmology revolved around noise, from the song of creation to the silence of the underworld. The death whistle wasn't just a weapon, it was a bridge between worlds, a way to weaponize the divine. Today, forensic audio engineers have replicated the whistle's sound for historical documentaries, only to receive reports of viewers experiencing nausea or vertigo. One museum even banned live demonstrations after visitors fainted. It's a testament to the Aztecs' mastery of perception, their ability to turn air into fear and fear into power. Perhaps that's the real curse of the death whistle. Not its scream, but the realization that a civilization we thought we understood could weaponize something as ephemeral as breath. She was sold into slavery as a child, traded between warring tribes like a sack of cacao beans, until history handed her a knife's-edge choice that would etch her name into the bones of Mexico forever. Malinche, known to the Spanish as Doña Marina, wasn't just Cortez's translator. She was the razor-thin bridge between two collapsing worlds. Fluent in Nahuatl, Maya, and later Spanish, she didn't merely relay words, she reshaped them, turning diplomacy into a weapon and survival into an art. But 5 centuries later, her name still sparks fury in some Mexican communities, where calling someone Malinchista is the ultimate insult, a traitor who abandons their own. So who was she really? A cunning strategist who played empires against each other, or a teenager forced to navigate annihilation? The facts are as fragmented as the pottery unearthed from Tenochtitlan's ruins. Born into a noble family near the Gulf Coast, Malinche was given away after her father's death, likely to secure an alliance. By the time Cortez arrived in 1519, she'd been enslaved to Maya traders who gifted her to the Spanish alongside 20 other women. What happened next wasn't just luck, it was linguistic genius. When Cortez's initial translator, a shipwrecked priest, struggled with Maya dialects, Malinche stepped in. She didn't just translate, she decoded. Spanish accounts describe her whispering tactical advice, warning Cortez of Aztec ambushes, even negotiating alliances with rival city-states like Tlaxcala, sworn enemies of the Aztecs who became Cortez's most powerful allies. But here's what often gets erased. Malinche wasn't a passive pawn. She leveraged her position with brutal precision. After bearing Cortez a son, Martin considered one of the first mestizos, or mixed-race Mexicans, she was gifted to another conquistador as a wife. Yet colonial records show she later testified against Spanish abuses in court, securing land rights for indigenous plaintiffs. Her final years remain shrouded, but recent excavations near her alleged burial site in Coyoacán revealed a curious artifact, a rusted iron key clutched in a woman's skeletal hand. To some scholars, it's a metaphor. The woman who unlocked empires died holding the only power she ever truly owned. Modern Mexico still grapples with her legacy. Feminist scholars recast her as La Llorona with agency, a woman who turned subjugation into survival. Murals in Mexico City now depict her not as a betrayed lover, but as a figure clutching a quill instead of a sword, a reminder that language, not steel, was the real weapon of conquest. Meanwhile, indigenous communities in Veracruz whisper an alternate tale. That Malinche secretly fed Montezuma coded warnings about Cortez buying time for resistance. The truth may lie somewhere in the middle, in the untranslatable silence between the words she spoke and the ones history wrote for her. Deep in the vaults of the British Museum lies an object so unnerving, even its modern caretakers handle it with gloved hands. A 6-inch-wide disc of volcanic glass, polished to a mirror sheen so flawless it reflects with eerie precision. This was no ordinary vanity tool to the Aztecs. It was a Tezcatl, an obsidian mirror believed to tear open the veil between worlds. Spanish priests recoiled at these artifacts, calling them devils-looking glasses, but their real purpose was far more complex. When conquistadors raided Moctezuma's palaces, they found an entire chamber filled with these mirrors, some small enough to fit in a palm, others as wide as shields, all mounted on ornate stands carved with serpentine designs. The Aztecs' obsession with obsidian went beyond practicality. Yes, their blades could cut sharper than steel, but these mirrors, they were tools of Tlamatini, or knowers of things, scholars who used them to track celestial movements, diagnose illnesses, and allegedly converse with deities. The process was called Tlaxoloni, meaning the act of seeing, and it wasn't mere superstition. Modern experiments show that staring into an obsidian mirror under low light induces a hypnotic state where the brain projects vivid hallucinations onto its reflective surface, a phenomenon science calls the scrying effect. Priests likely entered trances, interpreting these visions as messages from Tezcatlipoca, the smoking mirror god who governed fate itself. But the story takes a stranger turn when these artifacts crossed the Atlantic. In the 1580s, Queen Elizabeth I's court astrologer, John Dee, became fixated on a stolen Aztec mirror, convinced it could summon angels. His diaries described nights spent whispering incantations into its depths, recording bizarre dialogues with entities he called Eudor and Avnas. Historians long dismissed these accounts as madness until 2012, when chemists analyzed Dee's mirror and found traces of psilocybin mushrooms embedded in its crevices. Had the Aztecs treated their mirrors with psychoactive substances to heighten visions? And did Dee, unaware, inherit not just an object but an entire ritual? The most chilling discovery came in 2020, when LiDAR scans of an Aztec temple complex revealed a hidden chamber lined with 49 mirrors, each angled to reflect moonlight onto a central altar during the winter solstice. Researchers recreated the alignment and found the combined reflections cast a perfect image of Quetzalcoatl's feathered serpent, an optical illusion achievable only on that single night each year. This wasn't magic, it was proto-scientific engineering, a laser show engineered 5 centuries before lasers existed. Today, indigenous healers in rural Mexico still use obsidian mirrors for diagnosing ailments, claiming they reveal shadows around diseased organs, a practice modern medicine can't explain but hesitates to dismiss. Whether portals or psychological tools, these mirrors embody the Aztec genius for merging material and spiritual realms, leaving us to wonder, did they discover something about human perception that we're only beginning to glimpse? Long before biblical scribes penned the story of Noah's Ark, the Aztecs whispered their own tale of divine wrath and watery rebirth, a cataclysm so devastating it scarred their collective memory. According to the Codex Chimalpopoca, the world had already been destroyed 4 times, each collapse marked by a different element: jaguars, hurricanes, fire, and finally, flood. But their deluge myth wasn't just fantasy. Modern geologists have found chilling evidence of real floods that may have inspired it, buried deep in the sediment of Lake Texcoco. At the heart of the Aztec version stands Coxcox, a figure eerily similar to Noah. Warned by the god Tezcatlipoca, he survived the rising waters by sealing himself inside a hollowed-out cypress tree with his wife Xochiquetzal. When the rains ceased, their vessel came to rest on Mount Tlaloc, where they repopulated the earth, but with a twist. Unlike Noah's sons, Coxcox's children supposedly lost the ability to speak, until a dove gifted them new languages, scattering tongues like seeds. This myth wasn't just lore, it was a cultural cornerstone, explaining the Aztec Empire's dizzying diversity of dialects and their reverence for mountains as sacred arks. The real shock came in 2014, when core samples drilled beneath Mexico City revealed layers of silt matching massive floods around 3,000 years ago, precisely when oral traditions place Coxcox's ordeal. Even more telling, the sediment contained freshwater shells mixed with volcanic ash, suggesting a perfect storm. Eruptions triggering landslides that dammed rivers, followed by catastrophic bursts. Indigenous maps from the 16th century corroborate this, depicting Tenochtitlan's founding site as an island once called Place of the Flooded Trees. But why did this story resonate across Mesoamerica? Maya glyphs speak of a great flood that rolled over the heads of the ancestors, while Mixtec codices describe survivors clinging to floating mountains. The shared trauma may explain the Aztec obsession with water control. Their causeways, dikes, and aqueducts weren't just engineering triumphs, they were safeguards against divine anger. Modern hydrologists note that their capitals lay out mirrors ancient flood escape routes, with pyramids aligned to high ground. Perhaps most haunting is how these myths converge globally. The Aztec fourth sun destruction matches Hindu Kali Yuga cycles, while Coxcox's dove mirrors Sumerian tablets. Some scholars argue these aren't coincidences but fossilized memories of post-Ice Age sea rises that reshaped human civilization. Next time you see a Mexican mural of the deluge, look closer. Those swirling waves might hold truths deeper than myth, written not in ink but in layers of earth and collective survival. Hidden deep in the pages of the Florentine Codex lies a bizarre Aztec ritual where sacrificial victims swallowed a strange herb called tzompantli, not to ease pain, but to transform them into living corpses. Described as making men walk like shadows with empty eyes, this plant induced a death-like trance so convincing, Spanish friars believed the Aztecs could resurrect the dead. Modern ethnobotanists have spent decades hunting for this botanical enigma, and what they're uncovering blurs the line between poison, sacrament, and ancient neuroscience. The key clue comes from a Nahuatl verse describing the herb's effects. It steals the tonally, referencing the Aztec concept of life force. Victims reportedly collapsed with slowed breath and ice-cold skin, yet revived hours later with fragmented memories of speaking to ancestors. Early theories pointed to datura, a nightshade plant known for its zombie-inducing properties in Haitian voodoo, but chemical analysis of residue found on ritual blades revealed something far stranger. The compound matched sapo, a secretion from the Bufo alvarius toad, now known to contain 5-MeO-DMT, one of the most potent hallucinogens on Earth. But here's where the mystery twists. Aztec murals depict priests administering the herb alongside ololiuqui, morning glory seeds containing LSA, a chemical cousin to LSD. When combined, these substances don't just cause visions, they trigger catatonia. Researchers at Mexico's National University recreated the brew in 2019 and observed test subjects entering states mimicking clinical death for up to 18 minutes, their brainwaves showing patterns identical to near-death experiences. Even more eerie, survivors described floating above their bodies, watching priests perform ceremonies, an effect uncannily similar to modern accounts of surgical anesthesia awareness. The Aztecs may have stumbled onto a profound neurological hack. By carefully dosing this cocktail, they could simulate death without permanent harm, creating a ritual where the dying briefly crossed into the afterlife and returned as messengers. Recent digs near the Templo Mayor uncovered ceramic flasks with traces of both toad toxin and maize alcohol, suggesting the mixture was fermented to prolong its effects. One skeleton, buried with jade beads clenched in its teeth, a ritual to prevent soul loss, showed abnormal bone markings consistent with repeated toxic exposure, hinting at professional death walkers who underwent the ordeal regularly. Today, indigenous healers in Oaxaca still use a plant they call Yohualtzompantli, Night of the Skulls, in cleansing rituals, though its exact identity remains guarded. What's clear is that the Aztecs weren't just manipulating perception, they were engineering controlled brushes with mortality itself, turning biology into theater and fear into transcendence. As one researcher put it, this wasn't magic, it was the world's first clinical trial in altered states, and we're just beginning to understand the results. The Spanish conquistadors wrote endlessly about Aztec warriors, their feathered helmets, their obsidian-tipped spears, their terrifying battle cries, but they never mentioned the women who fought alongside them. At least not until archaeologists started digging up their bones. Beneath the cobblestones of modern Mexico City, researchers have uncovered skeletons buried with macuahuitl clubs and atlatl dart throwers, weapons no mourner would place casually in a woman's grave unless she'd wielded them in life. These weren't ceremonial tokens, the blades showed wear patterns from repeated strikes, and the spinal fractures matched those of male warriors who'd engaged in hand-to-hand combat. Take the discovery in 2017 near Tlatelolco, Tenochtitlan's twin city. A burial pit held a woman in her 20s, her pelvis shattered by a spear thrust, her fingers still curled around a flint dagger. Isotope analysis revealed something even more startling. her teeth contained traces of maize from the Maya lowlands, suggesting she'd traveled hundreds of miles, either as a trader turned fighter or part of a military expedition. Nearby lay another skeleton with arrowheads embedded in her ribs, buried alongside a stone box containing an eagle pendant and a tiny ceramic figurine of Cihuacotl, the serpent goddess who presided over childbirth and war. This duality was no accident. Aztec art often depicted Cihuacotl's priestesses holding infants in one hand and axes in the other, embodying the belief that creation and destruction were two sides of the same force. Spanish accounts do hint at female combatants, though they dismissed them as anomalies. One soldier's diary describes wild-haired women hurling stones from rooftops during the siege of Tenochtitlan, while another mentions a captainess leading guerrilla strikes from the marshes. But these were likely elite warrior priestesses, not rank-and-file soldiers. Excavations at the Great Temple confirm this. Several women buried in the sacred precinct wore carved jade plugs in their teeth, a privilege reserved for nobility, and their skulls bore the telltale grooves of tightly wrapped headbands used to distinguish military ranks. One even had a golden nose ornament shaped like a butterfly, the Aztec symbol for fallen warrior souls. What's most revealing is how these women's remains were treated. Unlike sacrificial victims, whose bones often show signs of mutilation, these warriors were laid to rest with honor, surrounded by weapons, polished mirrors for their journey to the afterlife, and sometimes even the bones of captured enemies. In 2020, genetic testing on a mass grave near Xochimilco proved 15% of the skeletons were female, their DNA laced with proteins indicating years of strenuous physical activity. Forensic artists reconstructed one woman's face using her skull, revealing a broken nose healed crookedly, a testament to a lifetime of combat. Modern depictions of Aztec society often paint women as domestic figures, grinding corn or weaving cloth, but the bones tell a different story. These were women who marched into battle, who strategized sieges, who possibly even trained the young boys brought to the Comicac military schools. The real question isn't whether they existed, it's why their history was erased. Perhaps the Spanish, whose own culture restricted women to convents and courtyards, couldn't conceive of female fighters. Or maybe the Aztecs themselves downplayed their role to fit a masculine warrior ideal. Whatever the reason, each new skeleton unearthed chips away at the myth, revealing an empire where the line between protector and nurtured wasn't drawn by gender, but by the will to defend what one held sacred. When archaeologists first pried open a sealed tomb beneath Teotihuacan in the 1950s, they expected to find the usual offerings: jade beads, ceramic vessels, perhaps a sacrificial blade. Instead, they recoiled at the sight of elongated skulls, their sloping foreheads and stretched craniums looking almost otherworldly. These weren't the remains of extraterrestrial visitors, as some sensational theories claim, but evidence of a deliberate cultural practice that transformed the very shape of human identity in ancient Mesoamerica. The Aztecs, along with their predecessors like the Maya and Toltecs, practiced intentional cranial deformation, a ritual where infants' heads were gently bound between wooden boards or wrapped tightly with cloth. This wasn't torture, it was a sacred transformation, a physical marker of status and spiritual belonging. Spanish chroniclers described nobles whose heads tapered like maize stalks, associating the shape with wisdom and divine favor. Forensic analysis of these skulls reveals no brain damage or impaired cognitive function, just a meticulous, generations-old tradition of shaping identity from childhood. But why this specific form? Murals and codices offer clues. The elongated silhouette mirrored the profile of the maize god, their most revered deity, linking the human body to the cycle of growth and harvest. Some scholars argue the shape also mimicked the sacred ceiba tree, which the Aztecs believed connected the underworld to the heavens. The practice wasn't unique to Mesoamerican. Ancient cultures from Egypt to the Inca highlands practiced similar modifications, but the Aztecs took it a step further. Certain skulls, like those found in the Templo Mayor's elite burials, show additional grooves and drilled holes where gemstones or gold caps were once affixed, turning the living into walking monuments. The extraterrestrial theories, though debunked, stem from a kernel of truth. When conquistadors first saw these skulls, they spun tales of giant-headed demons to justify conquest. Modern DNA testing confirms the remains are entirely human, with genetic ties to indigenous groups still living in central Mexico. Yet the mystery deepens with recent isotopic studies showing some elongated skulls belong to individuals from as far away as Panama, suggesting the practice, or the people traveled vast trade routes. Perhaps the most poignant discovery came in 2019, when a team working near Lake Texcoco uncovered the skeleton of a young mother cradling an infant, both with modified skulls. The baby's head was still wrapped in the remnants of a cotton headband, its tiny vertebrae showing no signs of distress. This was no act of coercion, but a mother's gentle hands shaping her child's future, one careful binding at a time. To dismiss these skulls as alien ignores their true significance. They're a testament to a culture that believed identity wasn't just inherited but crafted, a physical prayer to the gods written in bone. Of all the treasures lost when the Spanish torched Tenochtitlan, none haunt historians like the Royal Library of Montezuma II, a vast archive of painted codices said to fill entire palace chambers, each page a masterpiece of history, astronomy, and sacred knowledge. On the night of July 1, 1521, conquistadors under Pedro de Alvarado reportedly set these books ablaze in the courtyard of the Great Temple, their pigments curling into smoke as gods and kings vanished forever. But whispers persist that not all were destroyed. Some claim a handful were smuggled out, hidden in caves, or even shipped overseas to secret vaults beneath the Vatican, where they gather dust to this day. The few surviving fragments hint at what we lost. The Codex Mendoza, commissioned just after the conquest, contains frantic annotations by Aztec scribes trying to reconstruct their culture from memory. Pages of tribute lists abruptly give way to half-finished diagrams of sacrificial rituals. Then there's the eerie case of the Codex Borbonicus, discovered in a Spanish monastery in the 1800s. Its vivid depictions of calendar cycles include annotations in a dialect so archaic even modern Nahuatl speakers struggle to decipher it. Scholars suspect it's a copy of a much older original, possibly salvaged from Moctezuma's library, but the real mystery surrounds the so-called Vatican Codex, referenced in a letter from Pope Clement VII to Charles V in 1539. The note mentions strange books sent from New Spain, their contents deemed unsuited for common eyes. In 2014, an Italian historian uncovered an inventory listing a manuscript with jade green covers and figures that move when the pages flutter, possibly an accordion folded Aztec codex with animation-like sequences. The Vatican denies its existence, but infrared scans of a sealed 16th-century chest in their archives revealed organic traces matching Mesoamerican amotl paper. What might these lost books have contained? The Florentine Codex, compiled by Spanish friars, quotes Aztec elders describing texts that predicted celestial events down to the hour or mapped underground rivers beneath Tenochtitlan. One nobleman lamented a vanished genealogy stretching back 30 generations before the flood. There are even accounts of speaking books, codices recited in ritual tones believed to channel the voices of ancestors. Modern technology offers faint hope. Multispectral imaging has recovered ghostly undertexts on surviving codices, revealing erased passages about the place where the gods walked, possibly referencing Teotihuacan. Meanwhile, activists petition the Vatican to open its secretive Archivum Arcanum, where rumor says at least 3 pre-conquest manuscripts remain under lock and key. Until then, every faded glyph, every half-remembered myth is a puzzle piece to a history we set aflame, and may still, just maybe, piece back together. Among the most feared sights on an Aztec battlefield wasn't a mass of warriors, it was a single figure clad in feathers, his face hidden behind the golden beak of an eagle, his hands gripping a macuahuitl studded with obsidian teeth. These were the Cuapili, the Eagle Warriors, an elite brotherhood whose very presence signaled impending victory. Their rank wasn't inherited, it was earned through a crucible of pain and discipline that would make even medieval knights shudder. To become an Eagle Warrior, a boy had to survive the Comicac, the military academy where nobles and promising commoners trained from sunrise to moonrise. Spanish chronicles describe trainees scaling cliffs with bare hands, swimming across Lake Texcoco holding heavy stones, and enduring nights buried up to their necks in ant hills, tests designed to break the weak and harden the worthy. The final trial, capturing enemies alive in battle using only a wooden club, a feat requiring not just strength but strategic cunning. Those who succeeded were reborn in a sacred ceremony, their old identities burned away as priests draped them in eagle pelts and whispered this vow: "You are no longer a man. You are the claws of the sun." Their armor was a masterpiece of symbolism and function. Unlike European knights encased in metal, Eagle Warriors wore quilted cotton vests thick enough to stop arrows yet light enough for acrobatic combat. Over this, they layered feathered cloaks dyed crimson and gold, each plume painstakingly glued with rubber sap in patterns mimicking a raptor's wings. Helmets transformed their wearers into avian avatars, beaks of hammered copper, eyes of polished obsidian that glittered with predatory focus. But the true genius lay in their teal-lahuistly back banners made of reeds and feathers that snapped like wings when they charged, creating an optical illusion of eagles diving from the sky. Parallels to other warrior elites are striking. Like Japanese samurai, Eagle Warriors followed a rigid code of honor. Death was preferable to cowardice, and surrendering foes were often spared for ritual sacrifice rather than slaughtered outright. Their status echoed European knights, with the right to wear jade lip plugs and dine in the emperor's palace. But one key difference set them apart. Where knights and samurai served lords, Eagle Warriors answered directly to the gods. Each victory fed Huitzilopochtli, the sun deity, who demanded constant warfare to stave off eternal darkness. Archaeology confirms their fearsome reputation. In 2018, researchers excavating a temple near Tlatelolco uncovered the burial of an Eagle Warrior in his 40s. His spine showed healed fractures from hand-to-hand combat, while his skull bore a groove from a tightly worn helmet strap. Beside him lay the skeleton of a scarlet macaw, a bird sacred to warriors for its ability to speak between earth and sky. Most revealing, his fingernails contained traces of gold dust, suggesting he'd ritually handled divine offerings before battle. Today, modern Mexican special forces still invoke the Eagle Warrior legacy, their insignia bearing the same raptor motifs. It's a testament to a brotherhood that transcended mere soldiering. They were living symbols of an empire's might, engineered to dominate both land and legend. For centuries, scholars and seekers have scoured the Americas searching for Aztlan, the legendary homeland where the Aztecs began their great migration before founding Tenochtitlan. Unlike the lost cities of gold that obsessed Spanish conquistadors, this was no place of material riches. Aztlan was a spiritual wellspring, an island in a lake where the Mexica people received their divine mandate to wander until an eagle perched on a cactus commanded them to stop. Yet the exact location of this sacred origin point remains one of Mesoamerica's most heated debates, with theories placing it anywhere from the deserts of Utah to the jungles of Michoacan. The earliest clues come from Aztec codices themselves, which describe Aztlan as a place of whiteness, surrounded by water and dotted with reeds, details that suggest a highland lake similar to their eventual capital. But the Florentine Codex adds cryptic layers. It mentions Chicamostoc, or the place of 7 caves, where 7 tribes emerged before dispersing across the land. Modern researchers have matched these descriptions to real geological formations, including Cerro Culiacan in Nayarit, where 7 natural caverns align with ancient migration stories. Others point to Lake Powell in Utah, where ancestral Puebloan petroglyphs depict figures in feather headdresses strikingly similar to Aztec art. The controversy deepened in 1987 when a Nahua community in Guerrero claimed their mountain shrine was the true Aztlan, presenting a 16th-century map painted on deerskin that showed a cactus-growing island matching Aztec texts. Spanish annotations on the map even referenced Montezuma sending envoys there to renew the sacred bond. Skeptics dismissed it as post-conquest mythology, but recent LiDAR scans revealed artificial platforms beneath the lake's surface, possible remnants of the very island described. For modern Nahua people, the search isn't just academic. Pilgrimages to potential Aztlan sites have surged in recent decades, with elders teaching that finding the homeland could restore cultural continuity shattered by colonization. In 2019, a group of Nahua runners retraced the alleged migration route on foot, stopping at sacred springs to recite poetry from the Codex Boturini. Meanwhile, geneticists are quietly testing DNA from lakebed sediment in candidate locations, hoping to trace the Aztecs' path through ancient pollen or microbial fossils. Perhaps the most poignant twist came from an unexpected source, a U.S. Army engineer's report from 1942, declassified in 2016. Surveying the Colorado River basin, he noted a local Paiute legend about feathered strangers who long ago built stone shrines near a vanished lake. The coordinates, less than a day's walk from those very Puebloan petroglyphs in Utah. Whether coincidence or clue, the mystery of Aztlan endures, not as a pin on a map, but as a living compass pointing generations toward their unbroken past. In the shadow of a bustling Mexico City mercado, construction workers struck something far older than the colonial-era cobblestones, a sealed burial chamber untouched since the days when Tenochtitlan's canals still glittered under the sun. Inside lay not a king or warrior, but a middle-aged man surrounded by the tools of his trade. Rolls of untouched cotton dyed indigo and cochineal red, copper needles, and a wooden yoke still stained from carrying heavy loads. This was no ordinary grave. It was a time capsule, a meticulously arranged snapshot of Aztec daily life frozen in volcanic ash and silence. What makes these burials so extraordinary isn't just their preservation, it's their intimacy. Unlike royal tombs designed for spectacle, these chambers capture unguarded moments. One contained a child's clay whistle beside a half-eaten Tamil wrapped in corn husks. Another held a scribe's toolkit with ink-stained brushes and a folded amatil paper notebook, its glyphs still legible after 5 centuries. But the most revealing find came in 2021 near the ancient marketplace of Tlatelolco, the tomb of a Pochteca merchant, buried with his traveling staff still clutched in one hand and a ledger of debts etched onto animal bone in the other. Forensic analysis painted a vivid portrait. His teeth showed wear from gripping threads while sewing, and his vertebrae bore the telltale curvature of a lifetime hunched over goods. Beside him lay a jade bead from Guatemala, obsidian blades from Pachuca, and seashells from the Gulf, a miniature map of his trade routes, most poignant. A small clay figurine of Tecutli, the fire god, tucked near his heart, a traveler's plea for safe passage in the afterlife. These burials challenge stereotypes about Aztec society being solely focused on war and sacrifice. The merchant's tomb contained no weapons, only scales so precise they could measure cocoa beans to the gram. His ledger listed transactions for feathers, medicinal herbs, and even rent paid in salt, proof of a sophisticated economy operating on credit and trust. Even his death was recorded in Nahuatl glyphs on the chamber wall. He departed during the Vaintina of Miquel Huitantli when the merchant's dance. Modern technology peels back even deeper layers. CT scans of ceramic vessels in these tombs reveal hidden contents: chili seeds still fragrant, traces of chocolate residue, even a bee preserved in amber like tree resin. One of the most haunting discoveries was a basket holding a woman's hair braids, woven with turquoise beads and tiny copper bells, a mourning gift perhaps, or a keepsake for the journey ahead. What emerges from these sealed chambers isn't just artifact inventory, it's humanity. The Aztecs buried their dead with items they'd need not for status, but for survival in the next world. A weaver's spindle, a fisherman's net, a cook's grinding stone still dusted with maize. In these quiet, everyday objects, we hear whispers louder than any pyramid's echo, the sound of a people who loved, bartered, mourned, and remembered long after their empire fell to dust. Beneath the modern sprawl of Mexico City's suburbs, where traffic hums over layers of history, lies a mystery that's lured treasure hunters for centuries. A Spanish galleon said to have vanished into the depths of Lake Texcoco, its hull stuffed with Aztec gold. The story goes like this. During the brutal siege of Tenochtitlan in 1521, as Cortez's men fled the Aztec counterattack in what became known as La Noche Triste, the Night of Sorrows, one of their ships, overloaded with plundered treasure, sank in the lake's murky waters. Over time, as the Aztecs' aquatic capital was drained and paved, the ship's location faded into legend until modern technology began peeling back the Earth's secrets. In 2014, a team of archaeologists scanning the lakebed with ground-penetrating radar detected an anomaly near the neighborhood of Iztapalapa, a mass roughly 100 feet long, resting 30 feet below street level, its shape eerily reminiscent of a 16th-century caravel. Sonar images revealed what appeared to be a keel-like structure and even potential cannons, though sediment made confirmation impossible without excavation. The Mexican government quickly classified the findings, citing concerns over looting, but leaked reports described the object as consistent with colonial-era shipbuilding techniques. Local lore adds eerie details. Elders in Iztapalapa speak of a ghost canoe seen on foggy mornings, gliding soundlessly over streets that were once water. Construction workers digging subway lines in the 1970s claimed to hit wooden beams, too large for any Aztec structure, only to have their tunnels flood mysteriously overnight. Even more intriguing are colonial-era maps held in Madrid's archives, one of which marks a spot in the lake with the note, "Aquí se perdió el oro," here the gold was lost. But here's where skepticism creeps in. Lake Texcoco was notoriously shallow, averaging just 10 feet deep in Cortez's time. Could a ship large enough to carry substantial treasure have sunk without immediately becoming visible? Some historians argue the ship might actually be a collapsed Aztec structure or even debris from the colonial-era drainage projects. Others suggest the treasure wasn't on a ship at all, that Cortez's men dumped chests overboard during their retreat, scattering gold across the lakebed. The truth may lie somewhere between myth and science. In 2020, engineers drilling for a new water treatment plant struck a cache of gold bars near the sonar anomaly. Forensic analysis showed the gold's alloy matched Aztec metallurgy, but its shape suggested Spanish smelting. Was this debris from the legendary ship, or merely a stash hidden during the chaos of conquest? Until full-scale excavation is approved, a logistical nightmare in one of the world's densest urban areas. The ghost ship of Lake Texcoco remains suspended between history and hope, its treasures perhaps waiting just beneath the next shovel's turn. Deep in the vaults of Mexico's National Anthropology Museum, a wooden artifact sits behind glass, its surface carved with intricate glyphs, its hollow body weathered by centuries. This is the teponaztli, the Aztec voice of the gods, a drum that didn't just keep rhythm but spoke, its tones believed to channel divine messages. Unlike any other instrument of its time, the teponaztli was carved from a single log of sacred ahuahuat wood, with two slits on top forming an H shape. When struck with rubber-tipped mallets, the slits produced distinct pitches, one deep and resonant like thunder, the other high and piercing like a bird's cry. The Aztecs called this duality Yohuale Ehecatl, night and wind, a soundscape embodying the balance of cosmic forces. Modern musicians attempting to recreate its music face a haunting challenge. The drum's tones aren't merely notes, they're linguistic. Recent studies by ethnomusicologists reveal that the intervals between the two pitches match the tonal patterns of Nahuatl, the Aztec language. When played in specific sequences, the drum literally speaks phrases like "inti lili inti lapali," the black ink, the red ink, a metaphor for wisdom. This wasn't just performance, it was sacred acoustics, a bridge between human and divine. Spanish priests, horrified by its power, ordered most teponaztlis burned, but a handful survived, hidden in caves or repurposed as church bells. One of these rediscovered drums became the centerpiece of a groundbreaking experiment in 2019. A team from the University of Veracruz, collaborating with Nahua elders, reconstructed its missing components: rubber mallets wrapped in jaguar skin, resin plugs to fine-tune resonance, and recorded its vibrations using laser interferometry. The results stunned researchers. At certain frequencies, the drum's sound waves caused nearby quartz crystals to vibrate, a phenomenon the Aztecs may have interpreted as the gods answering. When played inside the Templo Mayor's replica, the echoes lasted an unnatural 13 seconds, matching descriptions in codices of voices lingering in the air like smoke. Today, the teponaztli is experiencing a revival. Indigenous musicians like Natalia Cruz blend its ancient tones with electronic beats, creating soundscapes that honor tradition while defying genre. At the annual Canto de Agua festival in Mexico City, performers used the drum to converse with pre-recorded sequences from surviving artifacts, weaving new dialogues across centuries. Meanwhile, archaeologists in Michoacán recently uncovered a ceramic whistle tuned to the same pitch as a nearby teponaztli, proof the Aztecs composed ensemble pieces for rituals, a musical language we're only beginning to decipher. Hearing the teponaztli today is like eavesdropping on a conversation with the divine. Its voice carries the weight of an empire's prayers, the precision of a civilization that heard music in mathematics and divinity in every vibration. As one Nahua drummer put it, "We aren't playing the drum plays through us and the gods are listening." The night Tenochtitlan fell, the moon turned the color of drying blood, a sight so terrifying Aztec priests collapsed to their knees, weeping as they scraped their tongues with obsidian blades in desperate penance. To them, this wasn't just an eclipse, it was Tlaloc's eye, the storm god's wrath made manifest, a sign their world was ending. Spanish accounts describe the eerie scene: howling winds, panicked crowds, and the Emperor Cuauhtémoc's ashen face lit by that crimson glow. What none realized then was how chillingly precise Aztec astrology had been. Centuries before telescopes, their codices predicted lunar eclipses down to the hour, mapping celestial patterns with a precision that still baffles modern astronomers. At the heart of their dread lay the Tonalpohualli, a sacred calendar interlocking solar and lunar cycles in a 260-day dance. Priests tracked the moon's path through 13 heavens, each ruled by different deities. When eclipses occurred, especially during Nemontemi, the 5 hollow days at year's end, they signaled upheaval. The Codex Telluriano Rimensis depicts a blood moon as a jaguar devouring the sky, a harbinger of famine or war. But the real genius was in their predictions. By observing Saros cycles repeating eclipse patterns every 18 years, Aztec astronomers could forecast lunar events centuries ahead. One codex fragment, now in Oxford's Bodleian Library, lists eclipse dates for the 1500s with less than 12 hours error. The irony, their prophecy fulfilled itself. On August 13, 1521, the very night Cortés launched his final assault, a total lunar eclipse bathed Tenochtitlan in red. Spanish logs note how Aztec defenders froze mid-battle, some dropping weapons to wail at the sky. To a civilization that read the cosmos as divine dialogue, this wasn't coincidence, it was surrender. the eclipse's timing aligned with Michaelhuatantli, the festival honoring the dead when the veil between worlds was thinnest. Survivors later claimed the moon didn't just darken, it wept streaks of copper-colored light, an omen so dire even the Spanish halted their cannons in uneasy silence. Modern astrophysics confirms how hauntingly accurate Aztec records were. Researchers at NASA Eclipse database matched their glyphs to historical events, finding that lunar eclipses consistently preceded empire-shaking events, a drought in 1454, the Great Famine of 1487. But the 1521 eclipse was different. Atmospheric data from ice cores shows volcanic ash from a Peruvian eruption had tinted the moon blood red worldwide, an effect the Aztecs couldn't have predicted. To them, it could only mean one thing: the gods had abandoned them. Today, in remote Nahua villages, elders still recite warnings passed down since the conquest. When the moon bleeds, Tenochtitlan, the great crumbling, follows. It's a legacy etched not just in legend but in stone. At Malinalco's temple complex, a carved relief shows Quetzalcoatl swallowing the moon, his fangs precisely aligned to cast a shadow resembling the eclipse of 1521 during certain solstices. Meanwhile, contemporary artists like muralist Elena Chauvet stain cloth with cochineal dye during lunar events, letting the crimson runs evoke that fateful night. The blood moon wasn't just an omen, it was a mirror reflecting the Aztecs' deepest fear, that their universe, so meticulously ordered by calendar and sacrifice, could unravel in a single scarlet night. Hidden in plain sight on the pages of surviving Aztec codices lies a secret modern science, almost mist-faded glyphs that flicker suddenly to life under the warmth of a researcher's lamp. These weren't careless smudges, but deliberate messages penned in invisible ink, a cunning innovation that turned sacred manuscripts into covert spycraft during the Spanish invasion. The key, a formula brewed from the Xochitl plant, whose clear sap darkened to chestnut brown when heated, revealing words meant only for certain eyes. Unlike European invisible inks of the era, lemon juice or milk easily detected, the Aztec version was virtually undetectable without precise knowledge. Scribes mixed the sap with Tenochtitlan vanilla resin to mask its scent, then applied it with cactus spine quills to amotl paper. To the untrained observer, the document appeared blank or bore innocuous records of crop yields. But when held near a flame or, as scholars suspect, rubbed with warm hands during secret rituals, hidden battle plans, troop movements, or warnings about Spanish treachery emerged like ghosts from the page. A 2021 study at the University of Mexico tested this method using recipes from the Florentine Codex. When heated, a reconstructed Xochitl ink revealed glyphs reading "Caution. The bearded ones lie" beneath a seemingly mundane market inventory. Even more ingenious, the ink's effect was reversible cooling returned the writing to invisibility, allowing messages to be reused or concealed mid-conversation. Spanish accounts mention confiscating suspiciously warm codices from Aztec nobles, unaware they'd intercepted wartime intelligence. The real stroke of genius was in the delivery system. Poets and merchants, often overlooked as threats, carried these heated missives in their sleeves or even swallowed them. One colonial-era trial record describes a captured Aztec courier biting into a tortilla, a filled Xochitl inked message, his teeth leaving temporary indentations that vanished as the pulp cooled. Recent excavations near Veracruz uncovered a ceramic flask with residue matching the ink, its interior scratched with grooves, likely a portable heating tool disguised as a water vessel. Modern forensic teams now re-examine museum codices with infrared cameras, uncovering layers of lost writing. In the Codex Aztectlan, once dismissed as a simple genealogy, heated sections reveal battle diagrams of Tenochtitlan's canals, tactical maps for guerrilla resistance. The Aztecs didn't just fight with clubs and spears, they waged a shadow war of whispers and warmth, where knowledge itself was a weapon, and the paper burned long before the ink ever did. The jade mask arrived at the British Museum in 1894 inside a lead-lined crate, accompanied by a note that simply read, "Handle with care, it watches." Carved from a single block of translucent Olmec jade, the artifact depicts the smirking face of Tezcatlipoca, the Aztec god of night and deception, his hollow eyes seeming to follow whoever dares meet his gaze. According to the donation records, the mask had passed through 7 private collectors since being looted from a Teotihuacan tomb in the 1700s, and all 7 met violent or mysterious ends. One drowned in his bathtub mere days after acquiring it. Another went mad and burned his entire art collection before leaping from a bell tower. The last owner, a French diplomat, reportedly woke to find the mask on his pillow, though he'd locked it in a vault the night before. He shipped it to the museum within the hour. Curators initially scoffed at the superstitions until the incidents began. Security guards reported hearing whispers in Nahuatl near its display case, despite the galleries being empty. Night shift cleaners refused to enter the room after one claimed the mask's expression changed when viewed through peripheral vision. Most chilling was the 1926 case of a junior archaeologist who spent 3 nights cataloging the artifact. He was found crouched in the museum basement, his fingernails torn bloody from scratching Aztec glyphs into the stone floor. The markings matched a phrase from the Codex Borgia, "The smoking mirror sees through all disguises. Science offers rational explanations, of course." The mask's unusual composition impurities in the jade create faint bioluminescence under UV light, could account for its eerie glow in darkness. Its asymmetrical carving exploits optical illusions, making the smirk appear to widen when viewed from certain angles. But not everything can be dismissed so easily. In 2017, conservators using CT scans discovered microscopic channels drilled beneath the eyes, a technological marvel suggesting the Aztecs may have filled them with liquid mercury, creating the illusion of weeping silver tears when tilted. More unsettling, the scans also revealed human blood residue in those channels, preserved for centuries within the porous stone. The mask now resides in a special case lined with copper, a metal the Aztecs believed warded off evil spirits. Visitors often report a sudden chill when standing before it, though infrared cameras show no temperature drop. Some claim their cameras malfunction when trying to photograph it, while others capture strange mists around its edges. Museum staff rotate shifts to avoid prolonged exposure, and the exhibit label omits mention of its dark history. Yet every year on the anniversary of Tezcatlipoca's festival, someone inevitably finds a single black feather, the god's sacred symbol resting on the case's lid. No security footage has ever shown how it gets there. Legends say the mask isn't cursed, it's alive, that Tezcatlipoca, the Lord of Shadows, gifted it to his high priest as a conduit for his power. That it doesn't bring misfortune but reveals the hidden sins of those who possess it. Maybe that's why the Aztecs buried it so deep, not to hide treasure but to imprison something far older and far hungrier than gold. Beneath the towering pyramids of Tenochtitlan, where tourists now tread on sun-baked stone, lies a hidden labyrinth that's rewriting our understanding of Aztec spirituality, a sprawling network of tunnels so vast it rivals the catacombs of Rome. Recent LIDAR scans commissioned by Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology revealed what surface excavations missed: a subterranean world branching beneath the Templo Maya complex, its passages snaking like roots under the city's ancient heart. These aren't crude crawl spaces, but engineered corridors wide enough for torchlit processions, their walls carved with glyphs depicting Mictlantecutli, the skeletal lord of the underworld. Some lead to flooded chambers where offerings of jade and coral still rest on underwater ledges, preserved in the silt like frozen moments of devotion. What stunned archaeologists wasn't just the tunnel's existence, but their precision. Laser mapping shows they align with celestial events during the zenith passage of the sun. Shafts funnel light into otherwise pitch-black chambers, illuminating murals of the star demon Tzitzimime. One passage terminates at a circular vault containing the skeletons of 7 scarlet macaws, their beaks opened in eternal screeches, arranged to point toward the setting sun on the summer solstice. But the most chilling discovery came in 2022, when a robotic probe sent into a water-filled tunnel captured footage of a life-sized stone figure, a crouching warrior with obsidian eyes, his outstretched hands holding a bowl designed to catch drips from stalactites. Analysis of the mineral deposit suggests this basin filled over centuries, its contents possibly used in rituals as virgin water, untouched by human hands until its ceremonial use. The tunnel's purpose remains hotly debated. Some scholars argue they were symbolic recreations of Mictlan, the 9-layered underworld where souls underwent trials before reaching eternal rest. Others point to strategic design. Certain passages connect to former lakeshore areas, suggesting escape routes during sieges. Spanish accounts mention Aztec nobles vanishing into the earth during Cortez's assault, only to reappear days later behind enemy lines. One colonial-era map even labels a now-lost tunnel entrance near the palace of Axayacatl as Camino de los Fantasmas, Road of the Ghosts. Modern technology is peeling back these secrets layer by layer. Ground-penetrating radar recently detected a previously unknown chamber beneath the temple of Quetzalcoatl, its walls lined with sheets of mica, a mineral the Aztecs believed could deflect evil spirits. When researchers pumped out floodwater from a side tunnel in 2023, they found footprints preserved in the clay floor, the bare feet of adults alongside the smaller prints of children, all leading toward a stone door carved with a glyph for sacrifice. Yet behind that door lay no altar, but a stack of folded cotton garments and a single conch shell trumpet, its mouthpiece still stained with hematite pigment from long ago lips. For the Aztecs, these tunnels may have been more than ritual spaces. They were living membranes between worlds, where every echo carried the voices of ancestors and every shadow might reveal a god's face. Today, as engineers reinforce the fragile passages with titanium supports to prevent collapse, they're uncovering new mysteries, grooves in the walls that match the dimensions of ancient mirrors, suggesting priests used reflected light to navigate the darkness, and niches containing charred remnants of hallucinogenic mushrooms, their chemical signatures still potent after 500 years. Perhaps the most poignant find came from a side chamber near Lake Texcoco's former shoreline, a child's sandal woven from reeds perfectly intact, its toe imprinted with a tiny turquoise bead. This wasn't discarded trash, but a deliberate offering placed where the earth met the water, the underworld met the living, and time itself seemed to ripple like the surface of a dark, unfathomable pool. The tunnels whisper a truth the pyramids above can't, that the Aztecs didn't just build upward toward the heavens, but downward into the mysteries beneath their feet, shaping stone into portals where the boundary between devotion and survival blurred into darkness. When we strip away the conqueror's propaganda and dig into the dirt of history itself, the Aztecs emerge not as the bloodthirsty caricatures of colonial myths, but as visionaries who built an empire of staggering ingenuity. Think about it, a civilization without wheels or pack animals engineered floating gardens so productive they could feed a metropolis twice the size of London at the time. Their astronomers tracked Venus with precision that would make modern planetariums envious, while their doctors performed cataract surgeries with obsidian blades sharper than today's scalpels. They turned sound into psychological warfare with death whistles that hijack human fear responses, and encoded secret messages in ink that only appears when warmed by human hands centuries before the CIA dreamed of invisible writing. Consider the contradictions that force us to rethink everything. These were people who wrote poetry about butterflies and flowers, yet waged ceremonial wars to honor the gods. They painted their temples in vibrant blues from rare Maya pigments, then lined their tunnels with mica sheets to deflect evil spirits. They cherished chocolate as divine currency, yet buried children's toys alongside warriors in the same sacred ground. Every discovery peels back another layer of complexity. The merchant spies who vanished without a trace, the female warriors erased from history until their battle-scarred bones spoke from the earth, the mirrors that may have been ancient VR headsets for communing with deities. And let's not forget the greatest irony of all. The Spanish who called them primitive took their medicines, their crops, even their cocoa, while burning the libraries that held the rest of their genius. What more could we have learned from those lost codices? How many more chinampas lie beneath Mexico City's concrete, still fertile after 5 centuries? What surgical techniques or astronomical formulas did the Aztecs master that we're still struggling to reverse engineer today? So here's the question that haunts every archaeologist's shovel stroke and every laser scan of a buried temple. If we've already underestimated them this much, what else lies hidden, not just in the ground but in plain sight, waiting for us to see the past with new eyes? Drop your favorite Aztec revelation in the comments. Was it the ghost ship in Lake Texcoco, the psychedelic zombie herb, or something we didn't even cover today? And if you're craving more mysteries that flip history on its head, hit subscribe, because the truth isn't just stranger than fiction, it's buried beneath it, one astonishing discovery at a time.